I hear the hatefulness of the gospel. I don't know another word to use. It's so hateful. I mean, just the yelling and the screaming, and you better, and it's end of time, and God's about to, and you know what I mean? It's hateful. And it's no wonder people are tired and worn out. That's our lesson. Are you tired and worn out? Part 3. That's our lesson. Burn out. Spiritually burn out. And it's what's at the heart of spiritual burnout is we don't know who God is. We don't know who the character of God is. When I say character, what kind of person is he? What kind of person is this God that we're preaching about? What kind of person does the good news of the gospel describe? Because that's the good news. It's not just good news, I'm going to heaven. We're describing a person here. It's the good news about this person. That's what the gospel is. Who he is, what he's done. I mean, we got to ask the question, what is God really like? So, you know, I put myself in an unbeliever's ears, or somebody with a heavy heart, and I listen to what's being preached, and I think, why would I want to go? The only reason I would want to go back to that is because I'd be scared. I'd be scared of the devil. I'd be scared of God. I mean, think about it. Scared all the way around. But I hope from here you see what God is like, a little bit anyway. My words don't bring it all out, but I mean, I hope you realize he's unconditional love. And I'm telling you, it's not popular. It's not popular. As a matter of fact, I'm glad that Paul wrote it down. Jesus said it himself. It'd be a stone of stumbling, a rock of offense, scandalized. We talked about that. It'll be a scandal. We've seen that you can't earn his love. That kind of blows my mind right there. That you can't earn his love. You didn't do nothing to start it. If you didn't start it, how can you stop it? And do you, boy, man, I'm just, so many things. But when you see God's unconditional love and you respond to that, you know what that response is called? Faith. I mean, just put it in a nutshell. Faith is when I respond to it. You mean he loves me unconditionally? You mean I can't earn his love? I can't lose his love? And I respond to that, and then that response is going to be joy in it. Any other thing other than that is not going to be joy, because I'm going to be trying to earn his love. I'm going to be trying to keep his love. I'm going to be doing all these things. So now I'm back to being tired and worn out. When you respond to that, that's faith. When you respond to that, then you've come to the miraculous flow of the Holy Spirit. This flow. And it's, I told you before, it's beyond burnout. If there's any burnout in our life, it's because we don't understand the character of God. We don't understand who he is. You remember he told the woman that you drink this water, you will never thirst again. I often ask people, I heard him this morning, you got a hunger and thirst after God. What did Jesus say? I mean, which is it? I got a hunger and thirst after God, or you'll never thirst again? I don't know. If I'm burning out, if I don't know these things, I've misunderstood the heart of the gospel. What its very intention is. And that's what spiritual growth is, guys. Spiritual growth is understanding the nature of the gospel. That's why the epistles, the epistles that Paul and Peter and John and Jude and those guys wrote are addressed to believers. Do you realize that? He didn't write to the world. He would say to the saints at Ephesus, he addressed them to believers. He called them the people that had faith and had love. And sprinkled throughout was Paul's prayers and the prayers for them. And the prayers that they prayed for them was that their eyes would be open. That they might have knowledge of his will, that they might know who they are. Never once would they come and say, well, you know what, Colossian church, you're incomplete, but if you will do this, then you will be complete. He doesn't do that. He tells them who they are. And he prays that their eyes would be open, that their ears would be open, that they might hear. Prayers for knowledge, for spiritual eyesight, ears to be open. If I'm praying that your eyes be open and your ears be open, that you might know there's the understanding there that you obviously don't know, or I wouldn't have to pray that prayer. Something you haven't seen yet. So what was it they had to see and to know? The true character of the gospel. If they didn't understand what they had come into, they didn't understand what God had done, what He's doing in us, then they're drifting at sea without a compass. Remember, we talked about that a few weeks ago. You're out at sea. Hey, I don't need a captain. I don't need a compass. We'll do it ourselves. So we got to look at the character of God specifically as Jesus revealed that character, as Jesus unfolded who God really is. Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Ask people that sometimes and they're like, well, but God's really angry. You know who Jesus got angry at? I mean, Jesus got angry. You know who he got angry? Church people. I mean, he really did. Now imagine that. The church people sitting there, and I'm listening to them on the radio this morning, mean, hateful, yelling. And Jesus is over here eating with tax collectors, prostitutes. And he's mad at the church going people. When I say church, they were going to synagogue. These are kind of blows my mind. And I know I've been there. I've been there. Not pointing the finger. I've been there. I mean, I came back to the church because I thought God was going to kill me. That was the character I knew of God. You do what He says or get busted up. Most people think that. That's why they're yelling and screaming. You know, Jesus, in His prayer, John 17, when He's praying, John 17:4, He says, I've glorified Thee on earth. I've glorified You, Father, on the earth. I finished the work You gave Me to do. He said, I finished the work You gave Me to do before the cross. Now, how can He say that? Was He lying? I finished the work You gave Me to do. What was the work? Well, if you go on down to John 17:26, Jesus says, I come to declare Thy name. I've come to declare the name of the Father. Now, that's just not, what's His name? Is it Jehovah? Is it Elohim? Is it, the Hebrews name it character. I've come to reveal fully who God is. He came in what? Hebrews says the express image of the Father. I've come to show you exactly the nature and the character of who God is. Now, when Jesus said that in John 17, that makes the cross inevitable, because that's what love is really going to do. I'll just throw this out there. People say, well, you got to love your neighbor as yourself, right? I mean, that's the old golden rule, right? I got to ask you this question. Did Jesus love His neighbor as Himself? I say no, He didn't. I know you look at me like, what? He loved His neighbor more than Himself, because He laid His life down for you and me. Do you see? You see the difference? What Jesus, the work that Jesus came to do, He come to enter into the blindness of our minds. Isn't that what happened all the way back in the garden? We got blinded to the very character and nature of who God is, and now we become in fear. And Jesus come to enter into that in human flesh to show us the true character and nature of who God is. We don't know what the Father's like except I meet with Jesus. You can't, when he would say you can't come to the Father except you come by me, it's more than just a statement of direction. It's a statement of you will never come to the Father except you see who he is in me, because you'll think he's some kind of monster ready to kill you. You guys ever, some commercials on TV, I hate commercials, but some of them are funny. And you guys see the Geico commercial where these people are running from the monster that's going to kill them. And they come up to the scene and there's a running car right there. And the girl says, "Why can't we just get in the running car?" "No, that's stupid. Let's go hide out in the barn with all the chainsaws and axes." And there's the old killer standing there just shaking his head like, "You bunch of crazies." I think that with church people. Why don't you just come to Jesus? Heck with that. Let's go into the barn. Let's go into the church so we can be chopped up and mutilated and chainsawed to pieces. I don't know if your mind thinks like mine, but I just see it everywhere. One of the greatest chapters to describe the character of our Father, I'm saying our Father, is Luke 15. And I know, man, well, you've preached on that before. It don't ever grow old. It don't ever grow old. Luke 15. It begins with a confrontation with two types of people here. Jesus is eating with publicans, the King James says, which is tax collectors and sinners. Well, you gotta say that with a sneer, sinners. I don't know if you guys, some of you got that little thing I gave you. I don't know if you got the Watchdog. If you see Matthew, and it's a really good movie, The Chosen. It's really good how they showed Matthew, that young kid, that tax collector, how he had to hide even riding through the streets because he was hated so bad. Now, these tax collectors were Jews, but to them they were traitors. They were the lowest of the low. They got paid good by the Romans, and then they extorted the people for more taxes. They were hated, despised. The Pharisees hated them so bad that if they were walking down the street and brushed up against one, they'd go home, take the clothes off, wash their clothes, and take a bath. If they even brushed up against one. Hated them. And they actually proclaimed that if you could cheat a tax collector out of the taxes that you owed him, that was actually an act of worship to God. That's how bad they hate him. There's a lot of crazy stuff that went on during Jesus' time that that's why I like history. These crazy people want to do away with our history, but it helps you see what was going on during that time. History's needed. Somebody was asking me about it the other day, and I said, if I was writing the Bible, I wouldn't have put David's failures in there. But God, through the Holy Spirit, saw it needful to put those things in there. I surely wouldn't have put that in there with Abraham, father of faith. Says, my wife, she ain't really my wife, she's my sister. Did it twice. What a liar. But Jesus was, he had a reputation. You know what Jesus' reputation was? He was the friend of publicans, the friend of tax collectors, friend of sinners. What kind of reputation is that? I want you to feel the scandal of this. Matthew was one of these creatures. I guess that's all you'd call him, a creature, tax collector, monster creature, traitor, lowlife. And Matthew's opened up his house here. He's called in all of his other tax collecting buddies from all over Galilee. They all come down there, and they're gonna have a party with Jesus. I bet you the other disciples were blushing in shame to go to this. I love how it shows in that movie. It's so cool when Peter comes up and he's like, "Hang on, Jesus. Hang on just a second. You do realize that's Matthew, a tax collector, and you want him to be one of us?" We kind of see the movies. It's like Jesus just called everybody and everybody's all happy. I can just see Peter now saying, "This guy, I don't know about him. We're good fishermen Jews, but this guy." There's the publicans. And then the other group that's there, the sinners. Oh my gosh. You know, those from the red district. You know, the petty thieves, the prostitutes, the kind that, them. All the low lives of the back alleys. Now Jesus, Son of God, Son of Man, Emmanuel, God with us, is having a good time, laughing and enjoying the company of the low-life bums and the prostitutes and the petty thieves. Sinners. I hear people say it on the radio with that sneer. Sinners. You know, you got to kind of, you can't leave your head still. You got to, bounce your head around. Gag when I say it. These are the kind of people that the Pharisees would pull their robes up tight and say, "I thank thee, O God." I ain't like them. Tax collectors, sinners. And when God became flesh and dwelt among us, He picked them for His friends. I got to question the character of God sometimes because I thought it would have been over there with Caiaphas. Big, high, holy rolling people. I mean, this scandalized every decent person who went to synagogue in all of Israel. Even the common folks are scandalized by this. Even the common folks ain't going to hang around the red district, and they sure. And the only time they would talk to a tax collector was when they had to pay the taxes. And you know what they would do? They would pay the taxes and spit. Give them the money and spit. I want you to feel this story. I want you to feel it. That's what got the Pharisees upset. They murmured and grumbled and complained. Not so much that He sat with them apart, that He ate with them. And don't think about this with your Western mind, because we eat because we're hungry. To those people in the Middle East, when you ate with somebody, it's a mini covenant. You're in covenant. To eat another man's bread means I'm in covenant with you. So they wouldn't just eat with anybody. But this man is telling these tax collectors and these sinners, "I'm on your side. I'm for you. I got your back. I'm your friend." Now just feel this story here a little bit. Now, Jesus is eating with these guys, having a good time, and the Pharisees, they saw it. I don't know how they saw it. They saw it. They're scandalized. They're mad. Over there, look at him. Look who he's eating with. Man, he's healing people, doing things in the name of God. Says no man's ascended into heaven except he that came down from heaven. We know, I mean, we know who he says he is, healing blind people. He's over there eating with tax collectors, sinners. Now I want to tell you something else. What if you was a tax collector and a sinner? You'd be pretty shocked too, wouldn't you? You'd be sitting at that table and you wouldn't be fully relaxed either, would you? I mean, Jesus got the reputation of being the holiest man around. He's got the reputation of being a prophet and all these other things. And now me, a prostitute, just came out of the red district, just stole some money off some people, knocked a guy in the head, mugged him. And now I'm sitting here, let's just be very, very careful here, right? He's sitting over there, but I know here just in any moment, judgment's going to fall. As we say today, lightning's going to strike. So it would have been very awkward for them. You know, church is very awkward for a lot of people. Very awkward. I know people come in and, I can't enjoy myself. It's because they don't know the character of God. They don't know who He is. So these people, they didn't know how to handle the situation. They aren't used to anybody accepting them. They're the spiritual lepers of Israel. You know what you do with lepers, don't you? You kick them out. So you got the Pharisees scandalized, ticked off, and mad. You got the tax collectors and the sinners. They feel awkward. They don't know how to handle the situation. Everybody's confused when God shows up and loves the wrong kind of people. We don't know what to do with it. Everybody's messed up. Well, it's the same today, ain't it? I mean, people say, no, we understand. Well, if you heard what I heard on the radio coming over here, man, God is about to unleash hell on everybody. He's ticked off, mad, hates sinners, hates Democrats. Jesus looks up and He invites the Pharisees to come closer so they can hear. You guys over there mumbling, I want y'all to come over here a little closer. And He said, I got a story to tell you guys. Jesus was a master storyteller. He could draw you right into that story. So He begins to tell the story of the lost sheep. He tells it from the perspective of, kind of a businessman. This sheep has value. So the shepherd leaves the 99 and goes after the one. I mean, he understands the value of this sheep. The reputation of him being a good shepherd. He's got to go. He never says, well, the sheep said the sinner's prayer and begged to come back home. He never says anything about the sheep doing nothing. He didn't go out there and give the sheep a Bible and say, here's your road map, make it back home. Puts the sheep on the shoulders. Carries the sheep all the way back home. When he gets back home, he doesn't say, no, daggone you sheep, I'm going to break your leg, and if you ever leave again, this is it. He says, you know what we're going to do? We got to have a party. We got to have a party. The sheep was lost, now it's found. We're having a party, we're going to celebrate. The sheep, back home, back where it belongs. Value restored. Jesus, He never called like the Pharisees would. He didn't call the Pharisees would call them. Remember, you got to shake your heads. Jesus called them lost. You know, I've told you this before. When something's lost, that means it has value. When a little child goes missing in a community, we shut the community down. You know, when somebody loses a paperclip, who cares? Just go get another one. We're talking something of great value here. People are worth an infinite treasure to God. Now, how can I say that? My goodness, He died on the cross for the whole world. And then, you know, He tells the story about the lost coin, but I want to go down and look at this story here, this lost son. And I want you guys to pretend with me. Pretend. If you're going to hear this story, I want you to hear it as you're one of these Pharisees that have gathered around. Because that's who He's speaking this story to, isn't it? He's speaking the story to the Pharisee. If we hear it with our Western ears today, we miss it. I want you to go back in your mind and your Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure time machine and go back 2,000 years to the year 30 AD and hear this story as you scandalized, ticked off, been murmuring and grumbling about him over there eating, and Jesus says, come over here close and let me tell you this story. But this lost son. So he starts in Luke 15 verse 11. A certain man had 2 sons. I could go a lot of different directions right here. You know, Isaac had 2 sons. I'm just throwing this out there. Isaac had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Esau the older, Jacob the younger. I could say it this way, the Jews and Gentiles. Because Esau ran off. He was a wild man. I want y'all to understand, we're all Gentiles here. I could go down that road, but I don't want to go down that road, okay? I just want you to see. Man had 2 sons. They're getting into him. Now, these 2 sons, both of them's got a problem with their dad. We think the only one did. Both of them had a problem with their dad. Both of them. Now, the younger son, he wears his emotions on his sleeve. You know anybody like that? He wears them on his sleeve. He explodes on society. The other guy implodes. You know anybody like that? They just keep it all in. And one of them, you don't know what's coming out of their mouth. Because, well, the younger son, he was that kind. They both came to the conclusion that their father was a slave driver. I mean, that was the conclusion they had. Do this, don't do that, go here, go there, do what I tell you or I'll get you. Both of them wanted out. One chose to stay and knuckle down and I'll just stay here and be a slave. But the younger one says, you know what, enough of this, I'm out. I ain't gonna be no slave. Being old dad, I'm out. And he says, I want the portion of my goods now. I want my inheritance now. Now, that was illegal. Now remember, the Pharisee, you're a Pharisee here, listen to this. The Pharisee who knew the law. It's illegal. Because, for one, the older son gets 2/3. He gets the double portion. The younger son, he only gets 1/3 because he's the younger son, so we're already illegal. But the law said the inheritance can't be divided until the father's dead. Because the father has to have stuff to live on. So, I mean, this is illegal all the way around. So you're a Pharisee here. You know this is illegal where we're going. The younger son who wears his emotions on his sleeve, he's saying to his dad, I can't wait till you drop dead. I want mine now. Even though I don't care if it's illegal, I want it now. I want you dead. Enough of this being a slave. Give me mine now. I'm out of here. Now Jesus puts it in legal terms the way he says this. He says, give me the portion of my goods that falleth to me, that belongs to me. In other words, this is to give the idea that the younger son has already went consulted an attorney. And he says, you know what? If Dad don't give me this stuff, I'm going to sue him. Because I've been on a slave right here on this farm under the slave owners. So I'm going to go with him with this proposal. And if he don't give me what's mine, we're going to court. Because this is legal terminology. The Pharisees would pick this up, right? They would know this. So this younger son's got a backup plan. Dad, you either give me mine now, or I'm going to sue you for all you got. The father gives it. And it says he takes his stuff, takes his journey into a far country. Far country. I think it's verse 13. Far country. Now, a far country, guys, doesn't mean that he got on a ship, sailed around and went to India or went to Australia. He's in a far, far country. It's Pharisees listening to the story. So a far country is not geographically some location on a map. It wasn't very far away. If it was far away, how would the older brother have knew what the younger brother had been doing? Right? The older brother knew what the younger brother was doing, so if he went to Africa somewhere or went down to India, how's he going to know? He saw it on Facebook? Instagram? They didn't have Instagram back then, believe it or not. They didn't even have newspapers. Far country in the Bible always means Gentiles. Okay? Remember Peter said on the day of Pentecost to all those that were afar off? He was talking about Gentiles. Paul says it in Ephesians, you were afar off. What were they afar off? He's talking to Ephesians, Gentiles. You were far off from what? You were far off from God and His covenant. They were afar off from the covenant. They lived away from the God of Israel. Even though they might have lived next door, the Jews referred to them as being afar off. So when Jesus says this young boy, this young son went into a far country, he's speaking that he made a religious decision. Okay, you got it? He made a religious decision. The boy wished his father dead, left home, and he's gone to a town where there's no Jewish synagogue, no God of covenant. They're Gentile people. That's where he went. What this young boy is saying is he says, I want out from my father and his God. Now remember, you're a Pharisee listening. You're a Pharisee. A Pharisee, just to throw this out at you, you've heard of a Jewish bar mitzvah. I'll tell you what that means. Bar means son of. Remember Jesus, he called Peter's bar Jonah? Bar, it means son of. Bar means son of. Mitzvah means law. So when a Jew was 12 years old and they went to have their bar mitzvah, they were now called sons of the law. Bar mitzvah. Now remember, you're a Pharisee here. You're listening to this whole thing. So at this point, what has the boy done? He's left the covenant. He's gone. He's went over to the Gentiles. What's left for this boy? It's over. Now Jesus builds a story. I mean, the guy goes out and this young boy, he goes out and man, he's blowing his money. And then right in the midst of that, a daggone famine hits. He's out of money, starving. He remembers, you know what, I grew up on a farm. I know somewhat about farming. So he goes to work on a farm. But it just so happens he's in a Gentile, far-off country. It's not a Jewish town. Surely this farm wouldn't be there. He joined himself to a guy who raised pigs. For a Jewish boy to join himself to a Gentile pig farmer, he's at the bottom of the barrel. I mean, you could go read Leviticus 11, and it tells you about clean animals and unclean, and it tells you with this pig, even though he's got a cloven foot, he's unclean. Don't you eat the meat? Don't even touch it. It's an abomination to you. It's abhorrent to you. Don't even touch it. If you touch one, you become unclean. You become as unclean as that animal is. Now this young Jewish boy is sent out to feed the pigs. Now, I don't know if you get a hold of this. I just want you to, in your mindset right here, this is a Jewish boy. Now, we raise pigs. And I'm telling you what, I used to hate going and feeding them stinking pigs. I call them stinking because they are. Anybody who knew, we put them up in the holler, but it didn't matter when the wind was right. Didn't matter. Them stinking things. You call it slopping the hogs. We feed the cows, we slop the hogs. We never say go slop the cows, no. Slop the hogs. I'd go down there and I'd mix that stuff up and stir it up, and I'd carry it up there, and I'd pour it down into that trough, and they would be grunting and hollering and splashing that nasty stuff all over me. Well, I hated them. Now this is a Jewish boy, and I used to think, boy, you're going to be good. That's ham right there. Sausage right there. Keep splashing it on me. That's the way I thought. But this is a Jewish boy. You can't even touch him. And now he's out there, and he's got to go in and slop the hogs. And remind me, Tracy telling me about her dad walking barefoot and stepping in cow piles, feeling it oozing up between his toes. He told his teacher that. Now imagine this Jewish boy, he's lost his shoes because we'll see he has to get some shoes back. And now he's out there feeding the hogs, and the hog slop junk is mashing up between his toes, and these nasty pigs all over him, and I don't care, that's splashing junk all over you, and they just wallow in their own mire. You know what mire is? It's poop. They poop and wallow in it. It's pigs. Now imagine you're a Pharisee. Remember, you're a Pharisee. Oh gosh, you're about to puke. You're about to puke in this story here. Man, this is terrible. Now this boy, this young boy, he's gotten to the point he sees himself as just about worthless, right? He's just about worthless. He's starving. But at least the pigs he would put his mouth right down in there and eat the husk with the pigs. Just get a hold of this. Now again, you're the Pharisee here. You got this young son. You understand the law. He's wished his father dead. He's illegal on his inheritance, and now he's out with the pigs. This boy's finished. It's finished. It's over. No way back. You talk about a bruised reed. Remember we talked about a bruised reed? Man, this reed ain't just bruised. It's stomped, crushed, broken into 1,000 pieces. And we talked about a smoking flax and how it stunk. Imagine how this boy must be stinking with the filth of pigs. Enough to turn your stomach. This filth would be all in his clothes and in his hair, and you can't get it all. Now this young boy in the middle of all that, this young son, he remembers. Now he's careful what he remembers here. Because he never said, I want to go home. He didn't say that. Because who's his dad? Slave owner. That's why he left. He didn't say, I want to go home. Oh, God, please. He didn't want to go home. But he did remember that even the hired servants back there, they got something to eat. They had enough to spare, even the hired servants. Now, I want you to understand here, the hired servant, they wasn't a part of the farm. Usually the hired servants would be there on when you planted and when you harvest. It was temporary help. They wasn't part of the farm life. You know, like UPS hires temp help to get through the holiday season. They're not really a UPS employee. You're just there for temp help. As soon as it's over, you're gone. Temp help. Well, that's what these hired servants was, temp help. You know, you need some extra typists for the day, you temp help. He says, at least my dad was generous to his temp help. I'm starving, so I'll go back and just be some temp help. I don't want to go home. I left that. I ain't going back. Right? I left that. I ain't going back to that mess. So he says, verse 18, I'll arise and go to my father and will say to him, I've sinned before you in heaven. Yeah, you have. I'm not worthy to be called your son, but make me one of your hired servants. He's saying, look, so he's writing his notes out to his dad because, you know, I'm not going to go back home, but I want to get this note to Dad. So, Dad, when you come out in the morning to hire the hired servants, you're going down to get some temp help. I just want you to look up at me. I'll be standing back there in the back and just remember me and hire me as one of your hired servants. And I'm not asking for my room back. I'm not asking for any of that stuff. So he's writing his little notes back, and so he can get this letter back to his dad, and so his dad will be looking for him. That's all he's going home for, right? Hired servant. That's the limit of what he expected, right? He wasn't expecting anything else. He never expected total forgiveness. I mean, do you ever feel this way? You never expected total forgiveness? I don't think any of us ever came into the church expected total forgiveness, total restoration. I'll just go home and hang around the edge. Hang around the edge. Want some crumbs off the table? That's what you do. You've came in, but like Barzillai, I don't want to. I'll stay over here. I'll stay on the edge, and hopefully I'll get some charitable handout, and I'll be thankful for it, and I'll be the best hired servant you could ever have. Remember me telling you there a couple weeks ago? Has the joy gone out of your holiness? I mean, joy and holiness don't go together. We got joy over here, it's fun time, but then we got to be holy over here. Because that's what we think of our Father, right? Jesus, I told you he's a master storyteller. Why does he put that in here? I'll go home and be a hired servant. Because he knows the heart of man. He knows when we have failed, we can't believe there's such a thing as full restoration. We just can't buy it. We just cannot believe it. Because you know what? When somebody fails us, we don't restore them back, do they? No. And I made God in my image. You failed me. You wronged me. No way. Keep you at arm's length at best. Keep you on the outside. That's what we do. We made God in our image, so obviously that's what he's going to do. Because I know what kind of sin that is. My heart tells me I can go home. You can go back to the church, but you'll always be second class. You'll always be a hired servant. You ain't really part of the family now. You ain't really one of the people who works on the farm. maybe twice a year you might come over here and get a little extra, 2 meals a year. I mean, when I'm thinking as the young son, I've gone too far. You ever think that? I've gone too far. I mean, you can't unscramble scrambled eggs. You ever heard that? You can't unscramble scrambled eggs. I hear David tell the story, I believe it was David, about the water that's poured out on a rock can't be gathered up again. With men, it's impossible. That's all I got to say. With men, it's impossible. Thank goodness. But with God, all things possible. So this guy, he's thinking, I've gone beyond the point of no return. Plus, I know father's expectations. I know his demands. He's a slave driver. He demands perfection. That's what I heard the guy, you get into church, you better not ever sin again, because if you do, woe be unto you. You came back into the church and you sinned willfully, boom, God's going to slap you upside the head. Have a bad thought. God's going to get you. You better get in church and you better be holy. And you better never smile again. Because God don't laugh and God don't have a good time and He hates everybody. Bunch of sinners. So this guy, he's kind of like me. He comes back and says, you know what? I don't want to get too close. I don't want to get too close. I'll just stay a hired servant. That'll be good enough, right? Ain't that what people say? I just want to barely make it in. Little cabin. I guess we're going to change that little cabin to maybe a lean-to. Maybe a teepee. No, gotta have a little cabin. Don't want to get too close. I don't want to be on Main Street called Gold Street. I don't want to be down there next to Jesus. No. And then this guy, he's thinking, you know what? I can't go back home anyway. I mean, these people, they'll never forget me. They'll never treat me the same. They'll never forget how low I've been. I can't face that. I can't face it. Plus, nobody will ever listen to me again, right? Because, I mean, if I'm supposed to be a son, I'm supposed to be directing these other servants and hired servants and doing the deeds of a son, and they'll never listen to me. I've given up all my authority. They'll always remind me, but remember what you did. I can't deal with that. So I'll just be happy to be a hired servant. Now, here's an interesting part. The Pharisees, in their literature, had the same story told slightly different. The Pharisees did. You can find it in their literature. They left the pig bit out, but in their story, the son comes home. The father receives him and says, you will be my slave forever, and I'll beat you into subjection before you die to prove that you obey me. Now that was the Pharisee story. So Jesus kind of twisted her own story up a little bit. So see, in the mind of the Pharisees, when a boy asked to be a hired servant here, in the mind of the Pharisees, that's too much. He's asked too much. He's asked too much. He's getting off too easy. He needs to pay for his crimes. He needs to stay on the outside and in outer darkness and do penance for his crime. He needs to be a slave at best. Now that's what's in the mindset of this young son as he's coming home, you know. Father won't receive me. I don't even want to be around him anyway. He's mean. The people on the farm will make fun of me. They'll never listen to me. I mean, you get this. I mean, he's wrote out, I want to get this word to the father. I'm going to get this note to the father. I'll be a hired servant when he goes down there Monday to hire some temp help to bring the wheat in. I'll be over there. So I've got this note wrote out. And as he's coming back home, he arose and came to his father. Verse 20. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And I know we just read her. I mean, this young son never dreamed it, right? He didn't have this kind of expectation. He never saw this. He never heard it. It never entered into his mind it's never entered into the heart of man what God has prepared for those who love him. God has now revealed it to us by his Holy Spirit. Abba, Daddy. We've come to what eyes have never seen, ears have never heard. I mean, do you get a hold of this? Paul would pray that you might be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the height and breadth and length and depth, to know the love of Christ, which passes understanding, passes knowledge. I mean, you realize the Father had forgiven him before the Son even left? You say, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. No. If he hadn't he wouldn't have watched the way his son went out. Because he knew the direction he left, so he stands looking in that same direction, waiting on him to come back. This wasn't just a chance. He had to be up on the hill and saw him. He was looking for that very son. He knew which way he went, and he went out every day looking for that son. And when it says he saw him a great way off, you know what that means? I've been looking for you. Every day. Been looking for you. I mean, this is what love is, isn't it? Forever watching. Forever watching. And then it says he ran and kissed him. You know what that means? That means he put his lips into the pig muck that was, and the stink that was on that boy, and the father just burnt his lips, and it says it kissed him all over. Now, you know the Pharisees. Remember, you're the Pharisees. You're shaking your head. No way. Now, Jesus, remember what he come to do? He's declaring to us. He's showing us the character of the Father. Our Father embraces and kisses us whom religion has thrown out. And as the boy, the boy starts to talk here. And the son said unto him, Father, I've sinned against heaven, and in your sight I'm no more worthy to be called your son. And the father cuts him off. The father cuts him off. Stop. I got something to say to you. You don't even let the boy finish. And, I mean, just get this picture. Now, say I'm the father, and here's the son, and I've been watching. The son's come to me, and he's willing to be a hired servant. He's telling me all of his sins and wrongdoings. And I cut him off, and I'm hugging him, and I'm kissing him. And at the same time, I just kind of look at my servants and say, y'all get to the house quickly. Y'all run back to the house and get the robe and his shoes and the ring. Go. Why didn't he go home and change? Why didn't they say, okay, go home, pour a bath? Right? Pour a bath, let's go get the boy home. No. Go home right now. We're not taking another step. Go get the stuff. It means that boy got changed behind a tree out there on the road somewhere. Why put that in the story? See, if they had gone home with that boy with his nasty pig muck all over him, smelling like a pig, no shoes on his feet, everybody would have forever remembered what they saw when he came into the house. And Dad was saying, nobody will ever know what you did, son, just me and you. It's us. It's a secret. Your life is hid with me. Go bring the robe. Put it on him. So when you walk into the house, you're going to look just like me. You're going to look just like me. They'll say, man, where's his son really been? I thought he was over here doing this, man. He looks just like his dad. You'd be dressed in father's robe. See, the sight of the past is all gone. There's a New Testament word for it. It's called justified. Justified. You're not just pardoned, you're justified. Justified means you are as received as Jesus is received. Jesus shows this boy coming home to be fully received as a son, not a slave. Put shoes on his feet, which means he didn't have any. And in those days, in that culture, not having shoes indicated slavery. He wants to make a point to this boy right now and to all around. Shoes, you are not a slave. You're not here to serve the Lord. That's a slave's mentality. Put shoes on his feet. You're not here a slave. You're my son. You're not only declared righteous, but the Holy Spirit comes. You've not received the spirit of fear again unto bondage, but you've received the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father, Daddy. The Spirit in sons of God, heirs of God, joint heirs, fellow heirs with Jesus. So great a love that He's called us sons of God. Remember we saw in 1 John, and such we are. Not just a title here, and such we are. The real deal, real truth is. So many come to Christ and come into the churches, and they do. I see it. All this stuff that they do every week is a slave's mentality. It's a slave's mentality. That's why they make the front of the church. All the slaves come forward. Get down and beg God for penance again. Come with a slave mentality. And then, you know what? From that moment on, you're going to work, and you're going to serve God, and you're going to try to please God for the rest of your life. And you're going to recommit, and you're going to make some new vows, and you're going to, slave mentality. They don't realize, that's what I told you, that's why you get burnt out. Because they don't realize that they are sons, they are daughters of the living God, clothed, robed in His righteousness. And He says, put a ring on his finger. Oh, this wasn't so he could look like Mr. T. So he could have a bunch of jewelry going on. It was a signet ring. Do you know what that signet ring was? That was his father's mark. It's how you bought goods. When the father goes into the store and he takes his ring and his little wax and he would just go up there and put his mark on it. That meant all those goods are his. The son had lost everything. The son had blew all his money. Tracy's a banker. Do you know what? People go into the bank to try to get money. It's called credit. So they pull up your history and they say, okay, Jeff Mathis. Credit history not too good. Right? And they rate you. Well, they pulled up this young son's credit. Not too good. He's got a 0 credit rating, which means he can't buy squat. The father says, put my ring on his finger. Put my ring. You have no credit, but I got infinite credit. They know me. And even when you walk in the presence of devils, they know me. When you walk in the presence of sickness and disease, they know me. You got instant credit. Whatsoever you ask in my name should be given. Put my ring on his finger. Signature ring. Covers it all. They go home for a feast. Now remember, how did we start out? Jesus eats with tax collectors. Sinners. But what do? They kill the fatted calf. That's a covenant meal. This boy had left the covenant and left the God of Israel. But now we're going to celebrate. This son is back in the family covenant. And he's heir to it all, just like nothing ever happened. But you know what? Something did happen. You know what happened on this journey? I mean, we look at this story, but something great happened on this story. This young son had discovered the love of the Father that he had never known. So we forget that sometimes in what people's journeys they're on. We think, oh my God, what terrible. This was a wonderful thing. Because the boy discovered something of the Father he never knew. He would have never known this love if he hadn't run off. The Father knew that. I just see the Father. He's like, oh man, he don't know who I am. You just wait till he comes back. Get to smother him in love. Jesus is declaring the love of the Father, and people are burned out because they don't realize who he is. Jesus demonstrated the love of the Father. He showed it. He demonstrated it in the cross. And it comes to us now in the person of the Holy Spirit. And I don't know anybody, maybe there might be some, but I don't. We've all went out and failed and burnt out and made God stupid promises. I hope you never promise God nothing again in your life. Please don't. Don't promise him you're going to serve him and do good and do all that other stuff, because now you're trying to do it in your own strength and you will utterly fail and burn out. What freedom it is to know you don't promise him nothing, but everything he promised to you is yes and amen in Christ Jesus. Oh yeah. What do? Receive it, rest. Sounds crazy, don't it? But we've all went out and failed, and and when I came back, and most of the other people, when they come back or come into the church, it's like, I really messed it up, but now I'm going to do better. I'm really going to try my best. I'm going to serve God. And we come back nervous. And we say, God, make me one of your hired servants. That's what we do. The ideal of full restoration doesn't even come into our minds. And it surely don't denominations, because you fall out of one of them, what do? They put you out. Because they don't understand the unconditional love of God, full restoration of God. So people with a slave mentality are always coming and begging. That's what slaves do to masters. They beg. They say, oh God, have pity on me. Oh God, I'm sorry, I've sinned this week. Oh God, I promise I'll read my Bible more. Sorry I missed church on Sunday night. I'll do better. And they wallow around in the floor as some bunch of beggars and slaves. And Jesus is saying, stop it. You got a robe on. Get up out of the floor. You got sandals. Look down at your feet. You ain't a slave. Feet shod with the preparation of the gospel. The gospel's all over your feet. Now stop it. Get up. That's what I want to tell people. Get up. You're not a slave. You got a ring on your finger. What are you doing? Fully restored. Well, I'm not. I know. Because Jesus did it. It's done. Like Meshebbeth, a covenant's been established. You've been invited to sit at the table, not because you did anything good, but because Jesus did everything good. Now the older brother, I'm going to hurry up here. The older brother lived in the house the whole time, but you know what? He lived there, but his heart was never there. He thought of himself as a slave too. And it all came out that night when he came home. He says, I've been out in the field slaving all day. That's what he thought of himself. And this, your son, he said, he ain't even my brother anymore. Your son goes out and does all this nonsense. And you slay the fatted calf for him, have a daggone party. I'm not even going to come in the house. And he says in verse 29, these many years I do serve thee. That's the word slave. And in verse 32, it was right, it was meet that we should make merry. For your brother was dead, is alive again, he was lost in his family. I don't know if you get a hold of that. That story kind of sinks in with you just a little bit.
I'd like that as well.
We try to earn what God freely gives. Try to earn it. Try to keep it. Try to maintain it. Try to serve Him. Can't enjoy nothing when you're a slave. And I'm gonna quit here in just a second. You remember this guy named David? I told you I wouldn't have put that in the Bible if I would have wrote the Bible. David had revived Israel back to the law. He had brought them back to the law. And I'm just going to throw this at you real quick. When he was about 50 years old, he's probably 50 years old. He's a great king of Israel. He looks down and sees Bathsheba. They're under the law. And don't forget this. They are under the law. And in Hebrews it says almost all things are forgiven by the shedding of blood. Well, guess what wasn't? Adultery. Commit adultery, there ain't no goat. There's no lamb. You got to be stoned. Understand you're a Pharisee. Understand you're under the law here. There is no shedding of blood for that. You must die. David, king of Israel, had brought Israel back, had revived Israel back into the covenant of God. And he commits adultery with Bathsheba. And not only that, the second sin was murder. And he did them both. And he writes in Psalm 51, he realizes he sinned. And David looks down and he looks at the law and he knows the law and he says, that's it. That's it. There's no lamb I can bring. There's no sacrifice and offerings thou don't desire. I know, God, this ain't going to do me any good. You desire truth in the inward parts, he says. Do you know what David does? David, this is why he was a man after God's own heart. Because he had that law. He knew he was guilty. He knew there was nothing but death. And he took the law and he set it aside. He said, God, I can't come to you on that anymore. I'm going to appeal to your covenant, to who you really are, God. I gotta reach inside, beyond the law. I gotta get beyond the law. I've got to come to you for who you really are. Restore in me. If there's any way, restore in me a clean heart, a clean spirit in me. And he appealed to God on the basis of covenant loving kindness, the word mercy. Probably one of the greatest acts of faith in the old covenant. That's why David was a man after God's own heart. And I just want to tell you something. You go read the book of Samuel, 2 Samuel, where this happened. And it's right in there. But Samuel is man's account of what David did. But go read Chronicles. And you won't find it in there. You know why? Because the new covenant says, your sins and iniquity I will remember no more. Chronicles comes to us from God's perspective. And God says, I remember it no more. Do you get a hold of that? remember Peter? I would think when Satan come to Jesus and says, I'd like to have Peter for a night, that Jesus would say, no, you can't have Peter, my apostle, my disciple. He's mine. But he tells Peter, Satan has desired to have you, to sift you as wheat. And I told him he could. That's what he said. I told him he could. But I want to assure you that I prayed for you. And I want to tell you something, Peter. When he's done with you, you'll be able to strengthen your brother like nobody ever has. Because that is the only way you're going to learn to not trust in your own strength. That's why we go through and burn out and do what we do, because we trust in our own strength, our own understanding. Cursed is the man that trusteth in man, or makes flesh his arm. I hope you can get a hold of that just a little bit. It's really wonderful. We look at people who have failed, and we try to cast them away. All I know is we've been bought with a price, clothed with his robe, sandals on our feet, ring on our finger, Holy Ghost bearing witness, fatted calf's been slain, and the music is playing. What are we doing? What are we doing? Anyway, I will quit right there.